What is up, world-class athlete? I want to welcome you to your two-handed backhand comprehensive training, where in this video, we're going to cover the 4 stages that every top player executes on their two-handed backhand of the unit turn, the acceleration part 1, part 2, the contact, and the follow through. Let's go ahead and dive right into the technical blueprint of executing that world-class unit turn. So as the pro identifies the oncoming ball, what they're gonna do is they're gonna rotate with 2 hands on the racket, their entire body as a unit, finishing in a checkpoint approximately just like this. Where, breaking it down, you wanna have your feet bent anywhere from a 20-degree angle to a 90-degree angle. And question, if the ball was much lower, would you wanna be bent more or would you wanna be bent less? Exactly, you want to bend more. So a good rule of thumb that I learned from legendary master Rick Macy is you want to bend to the level of the ball. So the ball's high, you can bend a little bit less, get that weight up. If it's lower, then you want to naturally bend lower to be able to get that perfect contact as you accelerate. So that's the level of bending. With regard to the hip, whether you're executing a semi-open stance backhand or a closed stance backhand, you want to make sure always that you're rotating your hips at least 90 degrees. So you want to be perpendicular to that, just like that. That's the identical value of the trunk as well. From there, you want to make sure that at the end of your unit turn, your right arm or your dominant arm is going to be completely straight at anywhere from a 10 to a 20-degree angle away from the body. Here would be a 90-degree angle. Here would be a 0-degree angle. So anywhere from 10 to 20. With that right arm straight and the wrist in a completely neutral position. The grip that you want to use is you want to use the continental grip. So where your index knuckles on bevel 2, just like that. So that's the exact checkpoints that you want to achieve with the right arm. So from that rear angle, you should be able to see that you have your racket slightly on edge or a little bit closed, depending on if you're going for more flat or topspin. The racket as at approximately a 45-degree angle, going up and away from the hand. And that's a world-class right hand technique of that two-handed backhand. From there, with the left arm, we want to focus on gripping that left arm with either a mild Eastern or a semi-Western grip, just like that. So that's with our index knuckle of the non-dominant arm being on either bevel 3.5 or 4, just like that. Here'd be the semi-Western, and then here'd be the mild Eastern. Brilliant. So now that you understand the exact grip, how exactly should you position your left arm when you get your backswing unit turn to being able to generate that maximum spin and pace? The first is that you want to look for a 90-degree bend in your elbow, just like that, with your elbow approximately at a 45-degree angle up, just like that. And then lastly, the elbow being about 10 degrees on the inside of the body. So from that position, you're literally going to be in a flawless unit turn position, just like that. All right, spectacular. So that's literally everything that you need to know to execute a world-class unit turn. Let's now dive into the acceleration part 1. So the first checkpoint with your acceleration is that as you're accelerating, what's gonna happen is you really wanna focus, and my common mistake that really allowed me to transform my game once I learned this, was that when I was accelerating, I was focusing on more so accelerating from my arms, whereas rather what every top player in the world does is they accelerate from their kinetic chain. In other words, you wanna focus on shifting your weight forward, driving your legs, and rotating, all to give you that natural, effortless power and ability of just getting your easy weight going forward into the shot, just like that. So the key checkpoint number 1, from that neutral or that closed stance, you're gonna fluidly shift your weight forward and drive off that front leg. And as you do that, you wanna simultaneously be rotating your hips, rotating your trunk, and then pulling your right arm away and down from your body, just like this. So the right arm is gonna perform 2 motions. Number 1 is you're going to abduct your right arm, which looks like this. And number 2, you're gonna be extending your right arm down. That's gonna allow you to tap into your lat and your posterior deltoid, which those 2 muscles, when you accelerate, are gonna allow you to generate the maximum amount of force going forward into the ball to feel truly effortless. Now, as you accelerate, it's super critical to understand that you wanna keep your wrists extremely relaxed. If we look at every single top player in the world, as they perform the abduction and the extension, their wrist is gonna perform 2 unconscious motions. The first unconscious motion is that the right wrist is naturally gonna flex in at about a 45-degree angle. Now, you don't have to think about these specific values, but rather just emphasize that you're consciously contracting your legs, your core, your hips, and your shoulders, while simultaneously keeping your wrists as relaxed as possible. I found that if you just focus on the bigger muscles while keeping the little muscles more relaxed, you're gonna automatically achieve all of those world-class optimal angles. So that right wrist unconsciously is gonna flex, and it's also gonna perform what's known as ulnar deviation. In other words, the racket is gonna naturally drop beneath the hand just like that. All right, so that is everything that you need to know in regards to that right arm. Now let's jump into the left. So again, a quick recap. You've split, you've positioned with the unit turn, you've initiated that acceleration from the bigger muscles of the body. Now you wanna focus on doing two primary motions with your non-dominant arm. The first motion is you wanna focus on straightening your elbow as you initiate that acceleration. And as you straighten your elbow, you're also gonna focus on pulling your arm forward and away from your body, just like that. So those two motions are gonna be conscious elbow extension and conscious horizontal shoulder adduction. So those two key motions, are you extending and are you adducting going forward? Those two key motions are then gonna contribute alongside everything else to generating that perfect effortless racket flip. Okay, brilliant. So now as you perform all of those key motions, and those are the key checkpoints you wanna look for, is when you get set, you're rotated at about a 90-degree angle, the tip is up and away, and then as you accelerate, the wrists are loose, the arm is pulling forward and down and creating that easy flip just like that. As you initiate that acceleration, you're then gonna reach the point where your racket has reached its maximum flip depth and also has reached its lowest point. So when you accelerate in the part one phase, the arms are actually gonna be traveling down, and then in the part two, the arms are gonna go from traveling down to then traveling up while internally rotating your non-dominant arm to generate that perfect contact, that perfect spin, that consistency, and that effortless power. So the key things to focus on is once you get set up perfectly with your split, your unit turn, and your acceleration part one, just keep focusing and look for that your arm is accelerating going up and forward while simultaneously internally rotating like that. And lastly, with your contact, to achieve that perfect contact point, you wanna look for a few key checkpoints. Number one is you wanna make sure that your wrist is gonna stay in an extended position, just like that. So the left wrist, or the non-dominant wrist, you should have your palm oriented towards the net, just like that. What that allows you to do is generate the maximum amount of power from your shoulder, as well as spin from that shoulder internal rotation, just like that. The other element to look for with your contact is that your trunk and hip are gonna be rotated at approximately a 45-degree angle in line with that net post, which is then gonna give you that perfect ability of generating the maximum amount of force from your entire body rotating through contact. Now, depending on whether you're hitting the ball early and taking it cross or going down the line, that will determine your level of rotation. But a really sound key value to look for is, are you consistently getting that 45-degree rotational value? And then the last checkpoint is then gonna be that follow through. So there's really two key variations with the follow through that you can experiment and that you wanna look for. If you're focusing on generating more topspin, the key checkpoint to look for is at your contact, is your racket string staying directly in line with the net? And are you internally rotating your racket to finish like that? Versus if you look at, a top player like Novak Djokovic with his backhand and he's crushing a flatter shot, you'll see when he makes contact, rather than creating a lot of brush and finishing with the racket like that, his racket will actually slightly open as he's accelerating through. So rather than focus on internally rotating going up, you're focused on just extending that racket forward and through just like that. Let's think big, let's be resilient, let's be persistent, and believe that you can achieve world-class technique. Let's go.